Welcome back to Friday Reflections. This past week I've had two things on my mind: bananas and inflammation. Figured we could talk about bananas another time, so today let's talk about something we've all heard of but maybe never fully understood: inflammation. It might be easy to think of inflammation as something to calm, cool, or suppress, like a twisted ankle that's red, hot, painful, and swollen. But leading immunologists now say that this view is far too small. Inflammation is not just a side effect of injury or illness. It's a core part of how the body works, even when we feel healthy. For decades, medicine treated inflammation as a harmful byproduct of infection or injury that we should block whenever possible. That view is changing. At Yale, neurologist and immunobiologist David Hafler puts it bluntly: inflammation is a very natural state. The immune system does much more than fight germs. It helps maintain balance, homeostasis, throughout the body. In practical terms, that means immune cells and their inflammatory signals are involved in tidying up molecular messes after regular wear and tear, pruning excess neurons in children's brains, an essential step in normal brain development, regulating the function of organs like the liver and intestines, which inevitably leaves behind some inflammatory activity as part of normal housekeeping. So inflammation is not just what happens when we are sick. It's also part of how a healthy body cleans, remodels, and fine-tunes itself every day. This broader view creates attention. If inflammation is built into normal physiology, why does it show up in so many diseases? John McMeeking, another Yale immunobiologist, calls the immune system a two-edged sword. The same mechanisms that protect us can, under different conditions, put us in harm's way. Inflammation is essential when we need to fight an infection, repair an injury, remove damaged or dangerous cells. But when inflammatory responses are excessive, prolonged, or misdirected, they can drive disease themselves. This is now clear in autoimmune diseases like multiple sclerosis, and also in lifestyle-linked conditions such as heart disease, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Akiko Iwasaki, an immunobiologist at Yale, summarizes it this way: it's hard to think of any disease that does not involve inflammation at some level. That has led several researchers, including Ruslan Medjidov, to argue that we need to rethink inflammation's place in the story of health and disease. Ruslan Medjidov, a sterling professor of immunobiology at Yale and one of the most influential inflammation researchers, argues that our traditional view, normal physiology plus abnormal inflammation, is outdated. In his view, inflammation is as central to understanding physiology as hormones are. It is not just a special emergency response, but a fundamental design feature of complex organisms. It is engaged whenever something in the body is off, whenever there is a deviation from homeostasis, the internal balance that keeps us alive. Medjidov calls for inflammation to be studied wherever the body's set points, its structure, function, or regulation are disturbed. That includes aging, obesity, and many chronic diseases where inflammatory programs are clearly active. To make sense of all these different scenarios, Medjidov proposes that inflammation can be triggered by three broad types of problems: loss of structure, loss of function, and loss of regulation. In biology, structure enables function, and function allows regulation. A problem in any of these layers can trigger an inflammatory program. Loss of structure is the classic injury scenario, which has been the main focus of traditional inflammation biology. Loss of function might come from allergens, toxins, or parasites disturbing how tissues work. And loss of regulation can arise when the body's internal settings are pushed out of range by chronic overnutrition, chronic stress, extreme environments, or aging. Crucially, Medjidov points out that these forms can overlap and even clash. An inflammatory response that is appropriate for tissue injury might interfere with what's needed for correcting a regulatory problem, and vice versa. Hafler's work on multiple sclerosis illustrates another of Medjidov's themes: inflammation is woven into normal physiology. Hafler's lab compared spinal fluid from patients with MS and from healthy medical students. As expected, the MS samples looked inflamed. but the healthy student's fluid also showed inflammatory cytokines. This suggests that cytokines, the small inflammatory proteins we associate with disease, are also involved in healthy nervous system function, adjusting synaptic connections and fluid balance, amongst other roles. The difference between healthy and diseased may be more about pattern, context, and regulation than about whether inflammation is present or absent. Medvedev describes the field as halfway to mapping the basics of inflammation and perhaps only 10% of the way to truly understanding how it works. For families and health-conscious readers, Ruslan Medvedev's perspective suggests a shift in how we talk about inflammation. Not inflammation is bad, but poorly regulated chronic inflammation may be harmful. Not get rid of all inflammation, but help the body use inflammation well, turn it on when needed, resolve it efficiently, and avoid constant low-grade activation. Not only block inflammatory pathways, but also support homeostasis through nutrition, sleep, movement, stress regulation, and a healthy gut function that reduce the need for constant inflammatory correction. That's the heart of Ruslan Medvedev's contribution. He invites us to stop treating inflammation as a side note and instead see it as one of the main languages through which the body senses problems, responds, and when things go well, returns itself to health. If your body could send you a postcard about its current state of inflammation, what do you think it would say?